It's a story told in chiptune and pixel art. The end of the world has come and gone. A cute little robot sporting familiar teal pigtails strikes out from her shelter to seek out her creator, with nothing on her but a potted plant that's yet to sprout. Throughout her journey, the robot discovers countless wonders in this ruined world, but is also battered by the harsh conditions of the wasteland. She's falling apart by the time she finds out that the man she's been seeking has already died without her. Devastated, the flood of her tears finally coaxes her plant to sprout, and so life returns to the world even as the robot finally shuts down to join her master in death. In another format, in the hands of a different storyteller, this might be the most depressing of tragedies. But Sasakure Yuke is a master of blending melancholy with hope, and his song Hello Planet is a prime example of that talent. The landscape he presents is not kind, but it is beautiful, and his heroine greets all that she sees with childish joy and enthusiasm. And as we listen to her, and indeed to any of the various singers Sasakure has entrusted his music to over the years, we are invited to share in that worldview, and join in on loving that which is broken and bizarre. The word Sasakure means hangnail. A bit of an odd thing to name oneself after, but hardly the strangest I've seen from a Vocaloid producer. The hangnailed fellow in question is a Fukushima native, and the strong, dry winds of his hometown used to leave his fingers perpetually chapped. On the other hand, pun intended, the UK half of his handle has nothing to do with the country. U is for underground, while his real given name starts with a K. I think it's a fun idea, but for brevity's sake, I'll be leaving it off. Born on the 11th of February in a year that hasn't been publicized anywhere I could find it, Sasakure's music career started with instrumental tracks, which he still does here and there even now. The most obvious inspirations for his musical style are the 8-bit or chiptune style soundtracks that the video games he grew up with. Equally important, however, was his time in the choir at his all-boys high school, and his later studies of classical music, including modern Japanese composers like Kinoshita Makiko and Miyoshi Akira. If you're not much of a classical listener yourself, it's easy to miss these more esoteric influences, but they actually meld together with the gaming stuff nicely. Scoring, be it for film, anime, or video games, has always taken cues from classical music. Chiptune scoring in particular has such a simple sound that it demands skillful melody writing more in line with the classical tradition than that of pop music. In the early days of console gaming, memory was at a premium, and the use of 8-bit sound chips over proper instruments was necessary to save space. Never mind the lush arrangements and production we can get for modern games. Music made this way also tends to rely upon 4-part chord structures similar to those used in choral music, and Sasakure was able to apply his understanding of that theory to compose his earliest tunes with an app on his phone meant for creating ringtones. Of course, once Vocaloid came into the picture, he had already moved on to creating much more complex projects. After uploading his very first Vocaloid song to Nico Video, he left an author's comment noting his pleasant surprise that the song had gotten such a positive response. It used irregular meters in a way that's quite unusual in modern pop music, and it could have been off-putting to a pop music audience had he failed to construct such a nice melody that balanced the jarring rhythm. I tell you the title, but it incorporates a lot of symbols and emoticons and I'm honestly not sure how to pronounce it. In any case, I'll link it in my sources document. Regardless, the song is a delight, and with a release date less than 4 months after Miku first went on the market, it's also more than a little bit ahead of the pop culture curve. He'd actually repeat this early bird trick twice more. Megurine Luka had only been available to the general public for a matter of days when Sasakure put out a song with her called Wonderz on the 2nd of February 2009. Later that year, Our 16-Bit Wars had a slightly longer turnaround time of a few weeks after its vocalist Gumi went on sale, but it was a huge early hit for her, and arguably one of the key songs in making Gumi popular enough to rival even Hatsune Miku. Though the focus was naturally on his songwriting prowess, Sasakure also gained renown for the music videos he created to accompany his songs. An early standout was Nijiro Adventure, or Rainbow-Colored Adventure. This was the first of his videos to go full retro gaming, with animated pixel art created in Microsoft Paint to look like a side-scrolling role-playing game right off the screen of a Game Boy Color. He would use this format again in the video for Hello Planet, which was part of his first big storytelling endeavor, the Doomsday series. Consisting of 4 music videos, including the aforementioned Wonderz and Our 16-Bit Wars, the series works backwards to tell a story about the end of the world, and the feelings of love which persist in spite of it. Hello Planet, the second release, is the last part of the story, while the concluding song, The Weekend is Coming, with Kagamine Rin on vocals, is its beginning. Its story is of an ordinary girl whose dreams of high school romance are dashed by the beginning of what will eventually become the apocalyptic war explored in Our 16-Bit Wars and Wanderlust. The songs were first released as part of Sasakure's album La 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 Eschatology, and then re-released for Sasakure's debut album with the record label UMAA, titled Do Vocaloids Dream of Doomsday Birds? If that phrasing rings a bell, that's because it's one of the many, many literary shoutouts that Sasakure has woven into much of his work. In this case, he's riffing off of Philip K. Dick's seminal neo-noir dystopian novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was the source material for the even more widely beloved film Blade Runner. And while this fits nicely with Sasakure's established fondness for sci-fi and robotic characters, his literary influences are many and varied. His bio on the UK Rampage website specifically notes writers Kusuno Shinpei and Nimi Nankichi as key influences, but a whole host of other authors have inspired shoutouts or even entire songs based off of their stories. Tiger Rampage with Rin, for example, owes its inspiration to Nakajima Atsushi's The Moon Over the Mountain, while Spider Thread Monopoly with Miku is based off of The Spider's Thread by Ryunosuke Akutagawa, the author whose work inspired the highly influential film Rashomon. He's also referenced authors and screenwriters from around the world, including Hans Christian Andersen, Stanley Kubrick, Aesop, and Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, author of the tremendously popular French novella The Little Prince. The most popular of his works to build upon the stories of others is Sasakure's 2010 song For Campanella, sung by Gumi. It's based off of the classic Japanese fantasy novel Night on the Galactic Railroad, written by Miyazawa Kenji and published posthumously in 1934. It tells the tale of two boys named Giovanni and Campanella who traverse dreams and reality to journey across the stars in a steam train, only for the adventure to end when Campanella leaves the train to join an apparition of his mother, in parallel to his accidental drowning in the real world. Night on the Galactic Railroad is wildly popular in Japan. Sasakure is one of many musicians to be inspired by the story, including fellow Vocaloid alum Yonezu Kenshi for one of his songs on his album Stray Sheep. There was an anime film adaptation in 1985, and countless other stories in various media have taken at least some inspiration from the novel. From the manga Shaman King, to the mobile game and anime Magia Record, to the Nickelodeon miniseries Over the Garden Wall. But few of these adapt the story as directly as for Campanella, which not only borrows from the plot, but casts Gumi in the role of Giovanni to give a sweet, gentle voice to the grief of a little boy who wants his friend back. With this in mind, it's hardly any wonder that the song would prove one of Sasakure's greatest hits, but in 2010, his career was still in its early days. His second UMAA album, The Fantastic Reality of Aesop, came out in 2012, and his third, The Fantastic Diagram of Futuristic Playdreams, in 2013. Both were concept albums, centering around philosophical explorations of human nature, and, in the case of the latter, how that might change in the future. Though neither were quite as big as Doomsday Bird, they each had some songs that cracked 1 million views on Nika Video and or YouTube, including Tiger Rampage for Aesop and Spider's Thread for Diagram. I think that Diagram in particular is noteworthy for its music videos, though that's partly down to my own taste. I've already talked about the excellent videos Sasakure made all on his own, but more often he's taken a directorial role, hiring artists with a variety of styles to better suit the feel of any given song. He'd already been outsourcing the work for a while. The artist Chakuro, for example, first partnered with Sasakure for Our 16-Bit Wars, and ultimately made 5 videos for him. But several years of success meant that Diagram had more resources behind it. There was Patchwork Eden with Gumi, which incorporates a mix of 2D illustrations from artist Mirto with trippy 3D visuals. And the aforementioned Spider Thread Monopoly, with its reddish, watercolor-esque drawings from Chakuro. And Sasakure got to work together with an illustrator called Toga for his next retro gaming video, a Miku song called Puppet Theater of Twee Box. Setting aside the natural similarities you get in videos done by a returning artist, just about every song looks totally different from the others. However, it's worth noting for anyone looking to check out the songs that Sasakure, in keeping with his whole broken robots and existential crises thing, is a big fan of glitching images and flashing lights, and there are more videos with them than without. I'm not especially prone to eye strain, but I hate for someone to stumble into a headache or worse on my recommendations, so approach with discretion if this tends to be a problem for you. Now, after 3 major label albums in the space of 3 years, Sasakure would not release another full-length Vocaloid-centric album for another 6 years, when he gave us Ergo Sum in 2019. This was because, as his music career really started to take off, Sasakure began increasingly working with human musicians to achieve his creative vision, starting with the formation of his band, UK Rampage. In researching this story, I discovered that they share a name with, of all things, a pro wrestling event held in London and Sheffield in the early 90s, which took up most of the first page of search results when I first looked it up. As fun as the idea is of this band naming itself after a relatively obscure WWE legacy, I'm pretty sure the band's name comes from that Rin song from earlier, Tiger Rampage. As their profile on the music forum website Discog states, the band was formed in 2011 to, quote, extend Sasakure UK's musical expression further from computer music. Indeed, the band uses kanji to make the sound UK instead of using the Latin alphabet, so I've seen them called Tangible Rampage or Artisan Rampage, depending on the translation. The line between Sasakure UK as a creative persona and UK Rampage is and always has been blurry. UK Rampage has released their own versions of a lot of Sasakure's biggest Vocaloid hits, and in turn, they provided arrangement for some of the songs intended for a Vocaloid singer. The best example of the latter is probably the song Future Eve with Hatsune Miku, released June 17th, 2022. The song was commissioned to be the official theme for the 10th anniversary Magical Mirai concert, and since the song was composed with live performance in mind from the beginning, it's only natural that Sasakure would have approached the project with the band rather than starting with something like his MIDI sequencer. The lineup on their website currently includes Sasakure at the head of the band, vocalist Mami, guitarist Hidehisa, bassist Ryosuke, drummer and arranger Yoshiori, and keyboardist Kishida Yuki. But they've rotated through a number of different participating artists through the years, especially vocalists. They've worked with the likes of Umineko, Daisy Daisy, and Majiko, to name just a few. I think one particularly noteworthy partnership was between Sasakure and singer Lhasa, released under the portmanteau Sasalala. Lhasa was born in Kobe, Japan, but spent most of her childhood in California, and she sings fluently in English. She's probably best known in the Vocaloid world for providing the English lyrics for Wowoka's World's End Dance Hall that were used for the first American Hatsune Miku concert in 2011. Her work with Sasakure has also included English updates to Japanese hits, specifically her English rendition of For Campanella, released in 2019. However, most of the music they've made together has been new material. Their most recent release, and their first full album as Sasalala, was 2022's Line, whose lead single Nevermore continues the tradition of literary shoutouts with a theme based around Edgar Allan Poe. All of these collaborations, with Lhasa, the band, and everyone else, are coordinated through Sasakuration. This is a small indie label created by and for Sasakure and his creative partners to handle music distribution and promotion, excluding UMAA's jurisdiction over their albums, of course, as well as handling merchandise and live gigs. In addition to the Rampage Gang and various other singers, Sasakure has worked with a number of his fellow Vocaloid creators. He and the late Sinamota, also known as Poa Poa P, traded rearrangements back and forth while they were both signed to UMAA, and Sasakure likewise contributed remixes to albums by folks like Dixie Flatline and Oster Project. The first UK Rampage album, 2012's UK Seikai Reconstruction, was actually mostly a cover compilation, which featured such hits as Jean's Kagero Days, Kudo Usapi's Senbon Zakura, and Deco 27's Two Breaths Walking. That last guy, the equally prolific songwriter Deco, also worked with Sasakure in 2012 to create not one but two co-written commemorative Hatsune Miku songs. The first was Thank You, or Sankyu, written as the numerals 39, a pun on the characters used to spell Miku's name. It was written to celebrate Miku's 5th anniversary, and though Sasakure and Deco were the only artists to work on the actual composition of the song, a few other Vocaloid artists contributed instrument performances, including Scop on bass and 40MP on keyboards. The song has been a staple feature of Miku's live concerts, including performances at Miku Symphony 2019 and 2023, for which the song was arranged for Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra. The second collab was the Christmas-themed Snow Song Show. The song, which also kind of tied in with Miku's 5th year on the market, was released as the title single off a compilation album by UMAA, to which both Deco 27 and Sasakure were signed. Sasakure's chiptune style is a little more prominent in this one, especially at the end of the song when it borrows a snippet of the melody from Hello Planet. I don't think it's ever been performed live, probably because Miku concerts don't tend to fall in December, but it's reasonably popular among cover artists, especially during the Christmas season. One such cover gave the song a huge boost a few years ago when singer Ado, riding high on a wildly successful year of chart-topping singles, put out her rendition on Christmas Day 2021. There's one more of Sasakure's Miku songs I'd like to mention specifically, and I confess I'm doing so here for lack of a better idea for how to bring it up more smoothly. This would be Figure, his demo song for the Hatsune Miku V4X Solid voice bank, which was released in August 2016. Well respected as Sasakure is among Vocaloid fans, I find his selection as a demo artist rather curious. Neither his complicated and often densely arranged instrumentals nor his style of mixing would necessarily be my first choice for a project meant first and foremost to showcase vocals. Also, he doesn't use Miku's growl parameter, a then new feature for V4, despite the powerful solid voice bank arguably being the best suited to it. On the other hand, his robotic style is a good match if you're of the opinion that a demo song shouldn't include much elaborate tuning, so I can see the logic there. It's another solid song from Sasakure regardless. Again, pun intended, not even a little bit sorry. And I'm definitely overthinking the matter, but there were only 4 Japanese demos for Miku V4X, so I remained very curious about how Krypton selects artists for their demos. Let's get back on track. As if all this weren't enough work, Sasakure has also provided music for several video game soundtracks, both vocal and instrumental. He provided music for 7th Dragon 2021 and 2, the song for the latter serving as its opening theme, and also wrote the main theme for the 2021 game The Caligula Effect 2. He's also done the occasional remix of other artists' game scores, the most notable example of which are probably his reworkings of some songs from the Undertale soundtrack, which include the ever-iconic Megalovania. Besides RPGs, he's also done a number of songs for rhythm games, including the Bemani, Performite, and Easy2DJ franchises. In fact, his biggest hit, by a margin of well over 10 million YouTube and Nico Nico views, was one such commission. Tondemo Wonderz was released on July 19, 2021. It had been commissioned as an event song for the Vocaloid-centric mobile rhythm game Project Sekai, with their release performed by the game group Wonderland's Showtime, and Sasakure's by Hatsune Miku and Kaito, his first time working with the latter voice bank. UK Rampage then put out a third rendition at the end of 2021. The track is among the most energetic that Sasakure has ever created, 3 minutes of upbeat mayhem that only calms down long enough to get the listener even more hyped up with the key change in the final chorus. The lyrics make reference to putting on a performance and trying to have fun in a world that seems to be going to pieces, reflecting the themes of the Wonderland's Showtime storyline, but it's pretty nonsensical and overall open to interpretation. Whatever people may be reading into the song, they like what they found. Tondemo Wonderz is not only Sasakure's biggest hit by view count, but it's also a pretty solid showing in the Project Sekai catalog overall, which might be why the development team over at Colorful Palette asked him back for a second commission. This time, it was a Vocaloid-only song commemorating the 2nd anniversary of the game, and written specifically to be extremely challenging to play. Once more featuring Miku and Kaito, Omura, the Great Intelligence, is classic Sasakure. The rhythm is stumbling and irregular, the instrumental full of beeps and synths and samples, and the lyrics imagine a post-apocalyptic world populated by androids questioning their existence. If that's not the essence of Sasakure UK distilled into one song, I don't know what is. Besides these 2 commissions, a few of Sasakure's other songs have also made it into the game. One, The Emperor, is a crossover instrumental from another rhythm game he worked on, and Hello Planet, Our 16-Bit Wars, and Sankyu all feature in the Virtual Singer category. Lost and Found, meanwhile, got a gorgeous cover by the group Leonid, created using the updated instrumental from UK Rampage's band remastering of the song. Sasakure often partners with fairly soft-sounding singers, but the leader of Leonid transitions from gentle opening lines to a powerful belt at the end of the song, which complements the heftier rock sound of this arrangement. Again, this is my personal taste creeping in, but I'd love to see Sasakure work with some more loud, strong voices like that again. The Project Sekai commissions, and the magical Mirai theme I mentioned before, Future Eve, would make their way onto an album of the same title in 2023, along with 7 other songs. He seems to have taken a liking to Kaito after Tondemo Wonderz, as his voice pops up in a few more songs, but Miku is, as ever, the main star. Beyond that, there's honestly not much else to say about the album. Per usual, Sasakure put out a very weird, very thoughtful, and very well-made record. Never one to rest on his laurels, or it seems to ever do much resting given the sheer amount of music he's put out over the last 17 years. Sasakure followed up by participating in the Project Voltage collaboration between Hatsune Miku and the Pokemon franchise. Released on the 10th of May 2024, After Apox was one of the final songs of the collection, and serves as a sweeping tribute to the big picture impact of Pokemon on fans everywhere. On his page of the Project Voltage website, Sasakure's comments note that After Apox draws upon the feeling of his life being enriched when he has a partner by his side, much like a trainer with their chosen Pokemon. In the months since Project Voltage wrapped up, things have been about as quiet for Sasakure as they ever are, which is to say, not particularly. UK Rampage put out a new album called Free Verse this past April, which includes their version of Tondemo Wonderz, and there have been a few music videos to go with it since. The most recent of these was for a song called A Desires, which came out just shy of a month before this episode's release. I don't think anything else of particular significance has happened since I sat down to finish up this script, but I'll be the first to admit the possibility that I missed something. Setting aside that I don't spend much time on Twitter, Sasakure's social media platform of choice, Years of on-off efforts at teaching myself some Japanese have granted me all the literacy of a mildly eccentric Japanese first grader. It's a decent party trick to impress my friends who only speak English, but not enough to follow articles in Japanese music magazines without relying heavily on Google Translate. When I found an interview with Sasakure on the Project Sekai YouTube channel for their second anniversary, I was deeply disappointed to find that it didn't have English subtitles. But I did find an excellent subtitled interview that Sasakure did on the official Hatsune Miku YouTube channel back in 2013, shortly before the release of the fantastic diagram of futuristic playdreams. It's well worth checking out if you want to hear about Sasakure's career in his own words rather than mine. But as I close out, my mind returns to the last question in the interview, which naturally concerned the future. When asked what he hoped for going forward, Sasakure said, "I'd like to keep seeking out my sound. I want to express a bizarre worldview. I want to persuade myself to know the bizarre things are fine." We're living in the future that he was contemplating, and returning to those words with the benefit of having enjoyed more than a decade of his tireless work. With that in mind, I'd say that the bizarre things, the tales of starbound trains and spiders and maniacally positive stage performers and lost little robots exploring very human feelings, those bizarre things are more than fine. If you'll forgive me one more pun, I'd go so far as to say they're wonderful. 39 big thank yous for listening, everyone. If you haven't yet, follow this pod, leave a review if you're feeling generous, and check out linktree/Happy Synthesizers to find the full suite of social media, listening platforms, transcripts, and sources documents. Happy Synthesizers is written and performed by Kay Judson. The theme music is Eve and Polka, arranged with inspiration from Loituma and Automania.